Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. We're thrilled so many of you could join us for today's program. Someone asked me how many years I've been working for the New England Council, and I said 4 years longer than Bill Belichick, 28. So I just want to thank all of you for being here today. I often begin my remarks by thanking Neil Levesque, who is busy circulating, who does a wonderful job here at the Institute of Politics. It is a nationally recognized center for politics, and they've done a great job here, and it would not be possible without the support of the president of this magnificent college here at St. Anselm's. That's President Vavaza, who's here. I want to thank him. And I also just want to give sincere gratitude to all of our very generous Politics and Egg sponsors. And the banners are on the walls across the room here. These people are corporate giants here in the community for many reasons. Not only do they run a four-star operation, but they're so civic-minded. They're engaged in so many worthy causes, and this is one, Politics and Egg. So I just want to thank them, and if you see anyone who represents any of these companies, you should say thank you for the support that they have given. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to take a moment to quickly tell you about a few upcoming New England Council events. Today is, in fact, the Council's first event of 2024. We have a very busy lineup planned in the next couple of weeks. On Tuesday, we're looking forward to a breakfast program in Boston with House Minority Whip Catherine Clark. Later in the month, we'll be hosting programs of Representative Ayanna Presley in Boston, and then Representative Zeth Magaziner in D.C. And on January 31st, we're incredibly excited to be kicking off a new initiative at the New England Council, and that is our Rise and Start Network for young professionals here in New England. The inaugural event will be a networking reception hosted by John Hancock in Boston. You can find more information and register for any of these events on our website, newenglandcouncil.com, or you can pull up our event calendar using the QR code at your table. Today, we're obviously very, very honored to welcome the senior senator for this wonderful, great state of West Virginia, the Honorable Joe Manchin. But before we introduce the senator, I would ask you to maybe dim the lights and see this quick 90-second film.
What the is that?
That's absolute bullshit.
Moderate seems to be the dirtiest one. In Washington, anyway.
It feels like moderate is not a stance, it's just an attitude toward life of like...
Okay. I would like to just acknowledge the presence of the former governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Bill Weld, is here. I want to thank him. Good man. And we have so many other elected officials, and you know who you are. And but they came from all parts of New England to be here to hear the senator speak. And speaking of that, I have the honor to welcome his daughter, Heather Manchin, to the stage. She's an accomplished executive who's worked her way up through the ranks of a very major life sciences company, from a data entry clerk all the way to the corner office. And today she serves as the CEO of Americans Together. This is Senator Manchin's new organization. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about the organization and the listening tour they're about to kick off today. Heather?
All the four-letter words in the dictionary.
There we, Heather.
What the is that?
That's absolute bullshit.
Moderate seems to be the dirtiest one. In Washington, anyway.
It feels like moderate is not a stance, it's just an attitude toward life of like...
In compromise? Forget about it.
People don't vote for Republicans to come to their state capital and work out deals in the back room with leftist Democrats.
So who gets left behind when both sides refuse to find common ground? You do. People across America know that sometimes, to get things done, you have to meet in the middle. And they do it every day for themselves, their families, and their communities. That's what makes America exceptional. Isn't it time our elected officials followed their lead? By joining the Americans Together community, you can push back on the partisan extremism that has taken over our political system and influence both parties to come together to solve America's problems. We'll raise up the voices of Democrats, independents, and Republicans who value common sense and show that the sensible majority in America wants results that can move our country forward. Join us to bring back compromise, to get done and make your voice heard.
Heather.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you. And thank you, St. Anselm, for providing a forum where compromise is not a four-letter word. I know that's how life happens, work happens, family happens, community happens, is with compromise. So Americans Together is a newly formed organization to build and give a home to the common sense majority. It is and should be the home base for American politics. And I think we all know that our country, the toxic polarization has pulled each party to the extremes. And we believe that not only does the common sense majority deserve a voice, but a seat at the table. So no better place to kick that off than here in New Hampshire, where your independent thinking has been a bellwether for politics for a very long time. And so thank you, and please join us at AmericansTogether.com. We want to not only give you a home and a voice, but we want to give the country a sense of that the moderates can drive discussion and decide elections. So thank you, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Thank you, Heather. Senator Manchin was sworn in the United States Senate in November of 2010, filling the seat left vacant by the late Senator Robert Byrd. And from his days as a state legislator to his 6 years as governor to his current role, Senator Manchin has always been committed to his philosophy of retail government. He has worked to connect with all of his constituents and made public service the cornerstone of his career. On Capitol Hill, he is known as a moderate who works across the aisle to develop common sense, bipartisan solutions to some of the biggest issues facing our nation. Job creation has been a top legislative priority. He has worked over the course of his time in the United States Senate to advance policies that foster growth and create quality jobs for all Americans. In both Wheeling and Washington, he's been a voice for fiscal responsibility, and he has worked to find common sense ways to cut spending while continuing to protect the most vulnerable members of our communities. In November, he announced that he would not seek re-election in 2024. And in December, he launched a new organization called Americans Together, with the goal of creating a platform for the middle to connect and empower moderate voices around the country. Needless to say, we are honored that the new organization's first order of business is a listening tour that kicks off right here in New Hampshire at Politics and Eggs. Please join me in welcoming our very special guest, the Honorable United States Senator Joe Manchin. All right, Joe. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, why don't we do that? Senator made a good suggestion when we start off with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all. This is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. First of all, thanks to St. Anselm's College. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I appreciate the hospitality. You all have been wonderful. And to all of my friends, and I feel at home here at a Catholic Benedictine type of agenda. Being an altar boy for 12 years, I feel right at home. So thanks again. I come and I am so proud of the representation you all have with Senator Shaheen, Senator Hassan are very good friends of mine. Kelly Ayotte's very good friends of mine. Governor Sununu, John Lynch and I served together as governors. Governor Bill Weld. There's a special bond about governors, I can tell you. We didn't look at what your identification was as a political party. We looked at what your problems were that we could help solve. And I've always had that mentality. It's how I was raised. And when we look at where we are today, and Heather said it best of what we're trying to accomplish, is Americans together. People feel homeless and helpless. You know, he says, I got to pick a side. It's not who we are. Washington should not make you pick a side. There's only one side, the American side. You can be a Democrat, Republican, or independent. In this state, I understand. This is a bellwether state. Basically, we can watch how New Hampshire would go, and that's pretty much where the country would go, because it was common sense you were after. You wanted someone reasonable, responsible in the middle. And that person is hard to find today. If you believe Washington is working, I can tell you it's not. If you believe that all of our problems, political problems, will be solved in Washington, they won't. It'll start right here. If the citizens of this country doesn't step forward, if they don't come forth and says, listen, I'm worn out. You have exhausted me. I can't take any more. I tell people I have a hard time watching television at night, and I have people say, Joe, you don't know how bad it looks. And I said, well, let me make sure I understand. You're sitting home with your feet up, watching television and really upset. Try it from my seat. It's not a pretty place to be. So when I look out in the crowd, how many are elected officials here? How many elected officials? How many would run for office? Those who are not elected officials now. This is the hardest thing we have, recruiting today. Because they said, I don't think I want to go through that. I don't want to be scrutinized that way. I don't want to have all of my family and everybody attacked because of who I am and what I'm trying to do. Public service is still noblest of all professions. We don't advocate that enough. I come from the vintage of, as a little boy, watching John Kennedy say, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And we're turning into a society where people are saying, how much more can my country do for me? It's not who we are. It's not how we become the superpower of the world. The hope of the world, if you will. And we've got to change that. But there has to be a place that you have, a home that you have, and that's what we're trying to do with Americans Together. We're trying to create that home to where people want to run and want to be involved, whether you want to run as a Democrat or Republican. I've never believed that identification of what party you belong to identified you as a person. Never believed that. And you're not my enemy just because we might be on a different side of a political party. I've never met a Democrat or Republican I looked at as an enemy. I've looked at it as someone that might be a competitor, someone that maybe have differences, but we're going to work that out. And we always could. We sat down. And today it's not the way it is. So let me tell you how I think we've gotten to where we have. I was 35 years old before I got involved in politics. So this is not an ambition, lifelong ambition for me to be in the political process. But I saw a void. A person came to my father's store one time and he asked, John, I've done all these favors for you. He said to my father, it was John, he said, Johnny, I've done all these favors. I need you to do me a favor. And I'm thinking, my dad's never asked for a favor. I come from a little small community called Farmington, West Virginia, a little coal mining community. 400 or 500 people on a good day, on a real good, strong day. And how I understand about political process, my father, I was 10 years old and he ran for mayor. Now, mayor in a little town, first of all, you couldn't anybody run for it. All you had to do is have one vote and you probably won, or two or three. But anyway, Dad ran, and I wanted to get, and I said, oh boy, my dad's running, I'm gonna get involved. So he wins, and then Dad was kind of a far-looking type of person. We had 2 caution lights in town. So my dad thought, well, we're gonna get a stoplight. Okay, we need a stoplight. We're a growing town, metropolis. He put a stoplight up and we had 2 wrecks the same day. Never had a wreck until then. Now, I understood being able to adjust quickly to constituents' desires. He took the stoplight down, put the caution lights back up. So I said, okay, that's how you have to rebound real quick. But anyway, I went to Washington, and Bob Byrd died in June of 2010. I was governor in my second term. And I loved being governor, and I know Bill loved being governor, and I know that John Lynch loved it, and I know that Senator Hassan, and every governor has loved being governor, because you could make a difference in a person's life. You can make a difference every day and change someone's life. And you didn't look at, oh, you're a Democrat. Oh, no, you didn't vote for me, so I'm not going to do that. That's not how they thought. Governors don't think that way. I go to Washington, and when I got there, I says, my goodness, it's not what I thought. This is the big leagues. Everyone should be, okay, we got these challenges in the United States of America, and we got people, we got challenges around the world, we got enemies around the world. How do we unite and basically have a strong front? And I didn't see that. So I kept evaluating this. And one time Harry Reid came to me and he says, Joe, he said, we're going to have a party line vote. Now, I'd been involved since quite a while, up until 2010, in political process. I never heard the term, be a party line vote. And I'm thinking, Harry, what's that mean? He said, well, all the Democrats got to vote for this. I said, Harry, let me look at the bill. I don't know why that would be, but let me look at the bill. And I looked at the bill, and I says, Harry, on my best day, I can't sell this crap in West Virginia. He says, what? And I said, Harry, you didn't elect me. I don't work for you. You can't fire me. You didn't hire me. I can't go home and explain this, and that's who I work for, so I'm not going to do it. Well, once they got to the understanding that I wasn't going to be pressured into doing crazy stuff, and I could, hopefully be an honest broker. And then my Republican friends, I said, why are we doing this? Why are we allowing these political parties to push us to the extremes? And that's what's happened. So if you look at it today, you're expected to pick a side. And I said, please don't do that. So how do we get involved in that? And I said, well, we've got to change. And I said, I come to work every day. You want me to go make phone calls to raise money to be against my colleague that's sitting beside me and I'm working with. Now think about a hostile environment. You want to know why it doesn't work? Can you imagine going to work every day and your co-worker's trying to get you fired? That's exactly what we do. So if you have a D by your name or an R by your name, you're expected to raise money to be against him. I wouldn't do that. I says, I can't look somebody in the eye on Monday when you expect me to go on Friday and Saturday and campaign against them and then say, hey, John, how about working with me on this? This is human nature. It's not going to happen. So I've said this. It's not going to change. Washington will not change. It's a duopoly. It's a business. It's doing very well. A lot of money's coming in. They're not going to change. This is where it's going to change. If you want to change the political atmosphere and the attitudes that we have in Washington, it'll change right here. But you have to demand that. The character of the people that you send, making sure that they're there for the right reason, and public service is in their veins. And with that, I've come to the conclusion there should be term limits. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'll tell you why. About 20 years ago, I was in a town hall in southern West Virginia. And I was talking in an open session like this, and they asked me a question, what do you think about term limits? And I said, well, you got to be careful. You'll get rid of a lot of people with experience. And I went on and on and on about why maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. And a little lady got up and she said, Joe, I really believe that term limits would really help us. And I said, well, tell me why. She says, if we had term limits, maybe we get one good term out of you. I swear to God, I had no comeback. I couldn't argue that. I said, by God, she's right. She was right. So I thought about it, and I said, maybe it would, because I can tell you to get one good term out of us would be great. In any segment that we're in, because sometimes you get set in your ways, you defend yourself more than what you're looking to basically take advantage of an opportunity to propel and go forward. So I've looked at politics and I've looked at government much differently, and I've always been that, and I'm not going to change. But the workplace environment is not conducive to getting results. But we got a lot of results in 50-50 split. The 117th Congress is probably one of the most productive Congresses that you've ever seen. And they said, why? We were split 50-50 for the longest period of time in the history of our country. 50-50 split down the middle in the Senate. We've come to the conclusion then, you know what? Those of us in the middle had an awful lot of power that we could basically pull people together. They couldn't get anything done without us. So then that's where the bipartisan group started taking over and leading us into things. Bipartisan infrastructure bill, CHIPS Act, Science and CHIPS Act, all the different energy acts that we've done. And I know we have some of our fellow Americans who are showing their disagreement on some things, and I'll talk about energy. We have to have energy security in America. We didn't have that. We're producing more energy today than ever before. No one will believe it because the administration doesn't talk about it. We did a piece of legislation called the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. You hear so much about this and that, and depending on which side is good, is bad, is whatever. That bill was designed to be an energy security bill, and the administration doesn't talk about energy security. They talk about, environment. We're responsible for our environment, all of us. But you better have the horsepower to run the greatest economy in the greatest country in the world. And we have that now. We're producing that. But we're also investing more in clean technology than ever before. So the groups that might be protesting are not looking at what we have done and what we have a chance to do. Realizing you have to do what you have to do today and do it better than it's ever been done before, but invest in the technology you want for the future. So we're doing both. But you don't hear that. So people say, well, why are we not getting our points across? I don't know. Are you afraid to say that we're producing more gas and oil and nuclear and doing things that we need to do to run the country better than we've ever run it before? Stabilize the world, if you will, in world markets. But on the other hand, we're investing more than ever, and there's more technology coming to us and more investments to our country. And that's why it hasn't collapsed. The economy's doing well. Things are still going better. All the procrastinators have said, oh, this is not going to happen. It's going to have a recession. Everyone's hoping for a recession. My God, I don't know why you want to hope for something like that. We have the ability with this great economy of ours to really make things happen. So where does it come down to? I think the character of a candidate, the character of people that want to serve. You are and I am who we are because of how we were raised, where we were raised, and who raised us. I've never forgotten that, and I've never made a decision that I can't think, can I go back home in my little town of Farmington and explain this? If I can't look those people in the eye, and I've said in my little state, here we are in New Hampshire, live free or die. West Virginia, mountaineers are always free. We both have the same desires, and our motto is all about freedom, democracy. It's what we want, it's what we cherish. And I've said back home, and I think the same is right here in New Hampshire, people can shake your hand, look in your eye, and see your soul. You can't BS them. That's all they got. Their gut instinct is all they have. And that's what we are about, and that's who we are as a country. So, Americans together, how do we get back? How do we give you a chance to believe there's something that you might have an area to cohese around? And that's what Americans Together is about. It's nothing catchy at all. It's pretty straightforward. Are we going to stand up and basically fight back to get this great country of ours back on track? Do you have to be run from the extreme right and the left? Do you have to be my enemy? Can't you be my colleague? Can't you help me solve the problems that we both identified? That's all we're asking for. And you have to get up here and just demagogue people. I can't do that. And the hatred is spewing out. It's not anymore. I always said this. I've been competitive all my life, and I've been in sports, and Nick Saban, I'll tell you, Nick and I grew up together. I'm 4 years older than him, but we grew up together. He was in one coal camp, and I'm in the other. And I knew him since he was 4 years old. And he stepped out and competitive, but I know him. He was raised in an atmosphere, his father and my father, and we were all good friends, and we were raised together. But they basically wanted to improve people's life, and his dad was a tremendous mentor and a coach. He'd go around and bought himself an old school bus, had a little furniture. No, we had the furniture store, and my grandfather had a grocery store, and he had a little filling station, golf filling station. And his dad would go around all the little coal camps and pick all the kids up and start a Pop Warner team. They called it the Black Diamonds because of coal. And it was unbelievable what they did. So he saw that. But it's gotten to the point now, I said, I want to be your competitor. If I'm going to compete against you, I want to beat you. I just don't want to defeat you. I want you to come back and take another crack at me, make me better and you better. That's how I always looked at competition. But now they want to defeat you and destroy you. They don't want you to ever come back. They don't want you to have a life. They can destroy you and your family and everybody in between. And that's why when I asked how many of you would run for office, I understand the reluctance. I really do. But you got to think that's a small price to pay for the great life you've had, and all of us, and the great country that we live in. And if we're not willing to fight for it, we might have a hard time keeping it. I'm more concerned today than I've ever been in my life. I've been around the politics all my life. Talking about, I'll never forget this, Mr. President, I was watching television with my mother. I was a very small child in 1960. And it might have been Walter Cronkite, and he said, the Catholic being a religious barrier, and they said, it's been said that if John Kennedy becomes president, the Pope will run the country. I looked at my mom, I said, boy, they don't know the Catholics we know, Mom. and it still rings true. There are things you can do. You all have about 349,000 people in this wonderful state of New Hampshire that are independents, registered independents. You have a tremendous opportunity to make a big, big difference as far as what's going to happen, what may happen, very quickly, and make a decision. I understand there's about 100,000, usually, historically, 100,000 New Hampshireans that are independent that don't really vote in the primaries. And that might be where the battleground is right now. I wish that the Democrat primary was still here. I wish that there was an active going after it. I think it's always been a very good thing. And it's always been a state that I've watched very clearly because I got a very good indication of what was going to happen when I saw what came out of New Hampshire. But that's not to be. But still yet, people getting involved. Why aren't they involved? I got people saying, no, I don't want to go vote. I got nobody to vote for. Well, you have to create that opportunity. So how you do it? Majority voting, gerrymandering. Okay, you have about 390 out of 435 congressional districts. 390 are already pre-cooked. Donald Duck could be running as a D in a Democrat gerrymandered district, and Donald Duck will win. Mickey Mouse could be running in a Republican, and he'll win. That's just the way it is. And that's not how we are, and that's not who we are. So how do you change that? If you can't change that, the easiest thing to change is how you do your primaries. Majority vote. You get more people involved. People thought didn't have a chance, didn't have a political machine behind them, didn't have money behind them or support, but they can really make a difference. Can make a difference, truly can. I've had some of my colleagues, a very dear colleague of mine is Lisa Murkowski. If it wasn't for that type of ranked choice voting or majority voting, she'd have never been elected. And you lose a Susan Collins and you lose a Lisa Murkowski, you've lost a tremendous bipartisan effort that they always engaged in. And so many good people. So these are the things that I think that can be done and should be done. And I'm hoping that we take all of this serious. Talking about the serious things we have, if you ask me, the greatest concern I have is crisis at the border. We have 2 wars going on right now. We must support Ukraine. You see I wear a pin for Ukraine in the United States. And I believe that it's the best investment that the United States has ever made when you have an aggression from a country that doesn't have our values, such as Russia. And here's a country that's willing to fight and die for their values and beliefs. And all we have to do is support them. And if not, we'll be drawn into a war, I assure you, if we're not, because they'll move on to the Baltics and to all the neighboring allies that we have. And then we are drawn into that. And what we see going on in the Middle East right now, last night there was an attack on the Houthis, which I think was deserved. I think we should have attacked them, should hit hard. They're out there basically shooting and doing harm to our military, and we're going to stand by and take it? No. So I appreciate that return. We'll see what happens, but we've got to. When you see what happened on October the 7th, which was just unbelievable to see that in today's world, and the type of viciousness and horrific things that have gone on. It's just unbelievable. So, but the border, I can tell you, is the most serious I've ever seen in my life. It's a crisis. I don't care who you are and what you believe. I've been there. I talked to all of the representatives in Congress and the Senate that represent the border. And I'm talking north and south border, not just one. But right now, the southern border is the greatest challenge that we have. That has got to be taken care of. It does. And I would hope that the president will do what he has to do if Congress doesn't do what it needs to do. I would pray that happens very quickly, and we'll just see where that goes. But we're going to find out next week. We were told before we left for Christmas, well, I was prepared to stay there all the way through Christmas, not to leave until we fix that border. And support for Ukraine and support for Israel and all the other humanitarian needs that we have. But that didn't happen. We were told that we go home and we come back and we'd be right that and take care of that pronto. And we didn't do it last week. And we have another week coming up. It can't go on another week. We've got to get involved. So the securing our border is if you can't take care of your own borders, you can't help people take care of theirs. And that's where we are. And I think it's a great concern that people have. The easiest vote in Washington and the easiest vote in any political arena is no. You can vote no 90% of the time and have a job for life. No one puts you in a position, or there's always someone who'll agree. It wasn't perfect enough, so I couldn't support it. How many times do we hear that? I can find something wrong with everything. And I can give you a reason why I didn't support certain things if I'm looking for that. If I give you a no vote, the majority of the time, I'm not the right person in the political process because I'm not looking for a yes vote. How do I move forward? And that's what happens. So the no vote, I've said this before, show me a person that votes no all the time and I'll show you a person's a lifer. They'll be there forever. It's a retirement home. I've outlined a few things that I think that can be changed, and my purpose. Everyone says, well, you're running for this or running for that, and I said, no, I'm running to basically bring the country together. I want you to know there's hope. There's more people like us that believe that the centrist, center left, center right, the grand old party, and the old blue dog Democrats that were there could always get together and make a deal. And we've got to get back to that. If you're going to govern, you've got to get back to governing. If you want discourse, then do what you can. If you can't change Washington the way it is now, which I don't think we can because of the enormous amounts of money that are supporting the duopoly of the Democrat and Republican Party. But if you want to find the middle, they can't win without you. Think about this. Nobody can win up here unless they get the independent vote. Nobody can win unless they get the center left and center right. They can't do it. The extremes cannot do that, but they believed it's what we call the tail wagging the dog is what's happening. And that's got to change. So with that, I'm happy to open up to any questions you might want. Jim, however you want to do it. I want to thank you all. I really enjoy and appreciate being here.
A few questions. I just have a few questions, and as I'm asking them, maybe you can think of a question to ask the senator. You've indicated that there's no such thing as a Democratic solution or a Republican solution. Do you ever think of becoming an independent?
Well, I am independent. Jim, you're talking about my identification.
Like a Angus King or a Bernie Sanders, and that way you could be really independent and say, depending on the issue, I'm going here, and another issue might be on the other side, but you are a Democrat.
I've never been accused of
West
my
Virginia
party
Democrat.
affiliation hold me back from doing what I thought was right. So if I thought that my identification as a party affiliate would change who I am and how I would act, then that's not being genuine where I come from. So I've thought about that, and if it makes people feel better, I'm the most independent Democrat you've ever met in your life. Mm-hmm. You're probably the most independent Republicans, and we're all friends and we can get along. So if the identification identifies who you are as a person, it's going to change who you are, then maybe you're in the wrong profession.
What are your thoughts on the Secretary of State here in northern New England and Maine, and the Secretary of State in Colorado removing the name of the former president from the ballot?
That's a hard one. If you think that's going to change the outcome or change its support, it hasn't done that. If anything, it's emboldened to a certain extent. I think the people will make those decisions. When you have a person who believes that the rule of law is for you and not for me, when you have a person that believes that basically the only fair election, the one I win, it's not who we are. It's just not who we are. So people will make their own decisions on that, but it's going to have to be, and they don't want it forced upon from the court system. Now, with that being said, the rule of law pertains to all of us. If you committed a crime, you got to pay the time. And if that happens, then that's different, but it's in the court system. Let that materialize.
Mm-hmm. So would you suggest or recommend to other Secretary of States, this is a gift to the former president by blocking him from the ballot? Or would you say it's up to individual states, let them do what they want?
I'll give you an example of what went on. Basically, the first impeachment, I thought it was absolutely, impeachment trials, and I've sat through a few, impeachment trials are truly political trials. Nothing good comes out of a political trial. And what basically, former President Trump was emboldened by the first one, saying it was a political trial, and he got more support. What we should have done is censored him. He deserved to be at least censored for what he had done, his actions with, at that time, President Zelensky, a brand new president of Ukraine. We didn't know who and the stature of this young president. And so you can look and You know, if you can't learn from the mistakes you made in hindsight, then you're going to continue to repeat them, and I don't think that would be wise.
You know, your name has been floated so many times on the No Labels campaign, and you haven't ruled it out. But they really haven't decided yet even to weigh in on this year. Isn't time ticking away that they got to make a decision soon whether they're going to participate or not?
I think basically you have to see the outcome of the primary and what we've ended up with the two categories. If you're handicapping it right now, you would say that it'll be Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That might change, though. There's still some time for that to change. So I think by Super Tuesday, you would know. First of all, No Labels. Let me just explain my involvement in No Labels is this. In 2010, I leave a job that I loved and go to something I think I can really be productive and helpful in, and I see it's going to be a real challenge. So I'm looking for a venue that we can sit down and gather and talk as Americans, and that was the only one I found. I went to the first meeting, I think, in December or January of 2010, 2011, and found out there was a group of senators and Congress people that had been involved, people I'd heard about all my life, that were looking to bring the country back together. It appealed to me, and I've been involved ever since. John Huntsman and I were up here before. We were the first chair and co-chair, Democrat, Republican, and I still believe that the cause is worthy of trying to find that middle and give you a venue. Americans together have basically stepped forward. We're completely different and not connected any way, shape, or form, and I wish them the best whatever. They're trying to provide a vehicle, if needed, for an alternative, for an option. And that won't be decided, I don't think, before March. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't think this thing worked that well. That's what,
Turn it on.
yeah, turn it on.
Yep. Do you
Anyway, that. Yeah, there we
Okay.
go. Anyway, that's did you hear my answers before you? Okay, I'll talk a little louder now. Anyway, yeah, I still anybody that's trying to move things to the middle, count me in. You have my vote all the time. I'm there. If you have a problem, you want to sit down, don't call me unless you want to fix it. I'm not going to sit there and cajole with you very long because I want to fix things. So it's kind of who I am.
Do you think that Senator Lieberman is leading the effort? I think he's the co-director.
Joe's a great guy.
Yeah.
Good
Do
friend.
you think that Senator Lieberman should reach out to former Governor Christie and say, come on in, we'd like to talk to you
Well,
about...
let me make it very clear. Chris Christie's a dear friend of mine. Him and Mary Pat and Gail and I go way back till we were governors. And I think Bill knows that. There's a special bond for governors. John Lynch and I know that. We served together. So we all. John's the one that explained to me the New Hampshire politics. Mm-hmm. He said, Joe, we got 400 people in, is it 400? And then you have 24 in the Senate.
In the House.
And I'm thinking, John, how in the hell do you deal with 400? He says, it's not easy. He says, but everyone's involved. And I says, that's democracy. I understand that. I like that. But governors, we never did. Up until 2009, the Obamacare at that time kind of started dividing us, pick a side. And I could see that. And I was head of the NGA at that time, National Government Association. Up until that time, Jim, you could go into an NGA conference and you couldn't tell who a Democrat and Republican was sitting because we always had to be paired up. And man, it was just wonderful to sit down and for Mitt Romney, I found out about his health care program in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I didn't have the economy to do what he did, but I could tweak it a little bit. Jeb Bush, my buddy down in Florida, on education. My wife is totally immersed in education, and we were able to take some of his ideas, and we shared them. And in the crisis we had with mining disasters, we shared with my friend John Huntsman, and then Mitch Daniels, and all of us working together, and Evan Bayh and the whole group. We're losing that moderate middle because they've just said enough's enough or we're timing out, one of the two. But that's what I'm trying to reinvigorate that. So Americans Together is going to say, here is your vehicle, here is your tool to move forward. We're going to help you every way we can. We don't care whether you're Democrat, Independent, Republican, you want to move things forward, you want to work together and unite people, come to us.
Former Governor Larry Hogan announced yesterday that he's going to step back from the No Labels. Is that a setback?
I don't know. Larry, I know Larry. Larry's a good man. We've done a lot of things together. And when it comes for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, identifying all the problems and all the things that we have let deferred maintenance for years and years and years in the country let go by, and we thought there was something we could be done. We pulled that bill out of the BBB and did that separately, and it had some challenges, but we got through that, and it's a great piece of legislation. But with that, Larry, whatever his intentions were, he's a good man, he's an honorable person, and we'll have to see where he goes with this.
You've made comments that you thought you knew Joe Biden so well as a senator that he was a more moderate statesman, public official, and you're a little disappointed in the way he has administered his administration. He's gone to the left.
Pretty far.
Yeah, and you recited all of the significant accomplishments.
Yeah, a lot of good things.
Infrastructure, the science bill, the CHIPS bill,
Right.
Inflation reduction. Some of them were bipartisan.
Let me just tell you about inflation.
Credit to the president on moving some of that with colleagues in the House and the Senate.
No.
Oh, okay.
One thing.
Just throwing it out. Yeah.
The thing, the president and I know each other. We've known each other for a long
Sure.
time, okay? A good man, a very decent person, and good to work with from that standpoint. And he'd always been kind of the centrist, within the Senate. As you recall, he's a career for a long time. Representing the state of Delaware, which is a very, very economic engine, if you will, conglomerate, as far as how they run their operation up there, and I appreciate that. But when it got to the point to where when he got elected, and I think people were looking for some normality, that's my best word, normality. Calm it down. Let's work together. That's not my enemy. I don't hate you. I'm not after you. We're going to work together. We have a different idea. You're going to go ahead and vote against me. That's fine. We'll sit down. We'll find something else to work on. You just move on. We thought that's what we were getting. And that truly is what I thought his intent was. He's been pushed to the far left. That's the only thing I've said. And I don't know whether it's just basically the hey, you owe me because I got you elected and this and that. I think that one time a person had a fundraiser for me when I first started out. I'll never forget, I was governor. I just got in the governorship, and the person came in and says, I need this, this, and this done. I said, well, that's not good. I'm not going to do that. Well, I had a fundraiser for you. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were investing in good government. I didn't know you were investing for yourself. So I found out how much in the fundraiser, I gave them all the money back, and that stopped everything. Once you stop that, you can stop it. And this is what people are expecting. But I would love to see President Biden move back to where he came from, where we thought he was. That's what I love to see. And that centrist type of man, that's what the country wants. I really believe that. And with that being said, I think that it would be more stabler if you would. And so when I get a chance to speak out, I do.
Yeah, right.
I talk about it.
That's candid. What about, you mentioned it already, President Biden probably will be the nominee in the Democratic side, and Donald Trump will be the nominee on the Republican side. If that's the case, what do you do in November when you go into the voting booth?
That's a difficult question right there, depending on what we have. What you're surmising is that it is what it looks to be. Mm-hmm. And then you have to make a decision. The character of that candidate, whether you agree or disagree, whether you support or haven't supported, whether you're in the same political party or not. Mm-hmm. The people that are just telling me, I'm going to vote for the Democrat because I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote for Republican no matter who it is, that's bullcrap. Vote for the person. Vote for the best person that should be leading this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure.
I was going to say bullshit, but they said I couldn't say that.
C-SPAN, this is an adult show. I'm told we only have about 10 minutes left, so I have 10 more questions, but I'd rather have you ask the question. So we have some people here from the ARP. I think Jill Martin has a question for the senator.
I do.
Okay.
I am a member of AARP.
I'm a proud supporter and a member myself.
I want to thank you, Senator, for your work on lowering prescription drug prices, including achieving the important legislation that secured Medicare price negotiation authority. And that covers.
Do you want to get Catherine down?
Insulin, also fit to 35.
Right. Medications now hopefully will be expanded in the future. I know that helps
Yeah.
and around the country. But can I ask what else you see as actions that politicians, both and policymakers on the federal and state level, can take to further reduce the cost of prescription drugs?
Well, transparency is the biggest thing. Transparency. But we had, so you'll know, I wrote into the bill total across the board negotiations on Medicare. They had to be negotiated down. Now, I could have said, oh, no, I can't do that. We got to do it all or nothing. But we got some very significant drugs that are able to be negotiated and reduce the price. I could have said, no, that's not good enough. But I had to take some movement forward rather than stopping it. Now let's go further. The best, if we would allow the Veterans Administration, the VA, to basically negotiate for all Medicare and Medicaid, be the best thing that can happen to the country. They're the best. They don't have to go through any middlemen. They don't play all the games. They have the lowest prices in prescription, our veterans. But nope, it's just the way the system's set up, and we're trying to get to that. To me, that would be the perfect solution. But if not, we have to expand that. The $35 in insulin, that's all in the Inflation Reduction Act, okay? Now, I can tell you, my Republican friends could not vote for the bill the way it was presented as reconciliation. They'll talk, it's kind of the inside ballgame. That means it was about party line only. But they were involved in every part of what we put in that bill because I wrote the bill with my staff, so I know it. And the thing I've been upset about the administration is they're trying to implement a bill they didn't pass. You hear a lot, Manchin is attacking back and we're fighting him. I'm basically saying, just follow the law. The bill is very clear. And we try to get all the things you've talked about. We're going to continue to expand because I think people are benefiting by that very much.
Maybe one more question.
I'd love to take them all.
Well, you only have so much time. Go ahead, Carolyn, and then the gentleman, other side in the back. Go ahead, Carolyn O'Connor. There's a mic right here.
Thank you for your time, Senator. Carolyn O'Connor with Liberty Utilities. So you mentioned Democrat and Republican extremes, and so here we are at the New England Council event.
Right.
Can regionalism work in Washington? Does it work in Washington?
Well, yeah, I mean, I look at, all different parts of the country, and every part is different, no different in your family. Someone asked my father one time, he said, John, he said, I want this, this, and this, and Dad said, let me ask you something. Do you treat all your children the same? You think they all have the same capacity and capabilities? Don't you have to give some a little bit nudge in the morning? Don't you have the other ones you have to catch them and hold them back? And, everyone's different. So our part of the country, you have to be able to look at the regions of how we operate and allow you to do all you can to be who you are. That's the bottom line. And let me just say this to you. Government was never intended to be your provider. If you're believing someone's telling you, I can provide, no, they're not. They can't. They weren't intended to do it. It wasn't designed. They're designed to be your partner with the empathy to take care of those who can't participate in that. So I've always told people, when you ask me, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, I don't know what I am. I can tell you this. I'm fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. And I think most Americans fall in that category. Fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. It's the way you run your life. You wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't. You really wouldn't. So how do we get that type of mentality? People come to me when I was governor. They said, I said, listen, no. What are you going to do for yourself? What are you going to do for yourself? I can only help you so far. First, one time, my dad had a little furniture store, and they said, hey, Johnny, can you give me some time on this? Carry me, couldn't make a payment. He said, sure, no problem. He helped people. And finally, the guy came in and said, Johnny, can I have a little bit more time? He said, hey, Jimmy, your mama only carried you for 9 months. And I never forgot that. You don't even carry a person so long. And so with that, I'm thinking, okay, how do we do this? You all have, let you go. That horse is ready to run, let her go. And this regionalism right now, sometimes you're held back because of this all-inclusive type of approach we take.
Other questions? The gentleman in the rear. Just identify yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Senator. Roger Stevenson, recently retired, Stratham, New Hampshire. Thanks for coming to New Hampshire.
Thanks, Roger.
I'm an independent. I pull Republican ballots and Democratic ballots. And I appreciate a lot of what you said. But one thing you did say is you would, at one point, wage an unrelenting fight against the Biden administration's efforts to implement the IRA as a radical climate agenda. Can you explain how New Hampshire communities that are vulnerable to increasing damaging flooding, such as Hampton this week, Dover, Portsmouth, as well as low-income and underserved communities all along our most vulnerable coasts, can reduce and respond to climate impacts without the IRA?
Sure. Well, let me just tell you this. The IRA is probably the most, I think, most prolific piece of legislation we've ever had as far as moving both agendas. And the climate, as I said before, we're all responsible for the climate, and I take it very seriously. The world is using, and it's called global climate, not New Hampshire climate, not West Virginia climate or United States climate. It's global. You look at what's happening in the world, we've been decreasing, and we can do it more than any other country. I have always said you cannot eliminate your way to a cleaner climate. You can innovate it if you want the world to follow. But there's my friends on the far left that believe they can eliminate. Stop using this, stop using that, and stop using it. That's not going to happen. 90% of all pollution will come from one continent, Asia, in the next 10 years. So if we don't show them a way to do it better. So what we did with the the Inflation Reduction Act, which was truly input from Republicans for over 5 years, I worked on that. We put that bill into the reconciliation, but we passed it. What it does, we're investing in the resources we need now for having the horsepower to run our country and stabilize the world, but also we've done more for investments in clean technology, carbonless technology, to bring that to the forefront. We have never matured some of these different types of processes. Hydrogen can be a tremendous horsepower, but also very clean. We just never spent any money. It's been around forever. Wind and solar by itself won't do it. It's a tremendous supplement, but we need more battery storage. We're basically, a lot of technology is going into it. We've had more money invested in the United States of America over the last 2 years than ever before. And what I said, I'm going to fight them for a radical change. They're trying to implement something that was never there. First of all, to have a manufacturing base of EV batteries here in America. Right now, we're totally reliant on China. I said, I'm old enough to remember standing in line in 1974 to buy gas to go to work. I'm not going to stand in line waiting for a battery from China. So if you want to go to EV, then make sure that you can promote the transportation and basically supply it from reliable North America, America, and all free trade agreements, so we're not held captive. That's what I'm saying. They're cutting things down because they're putting a political agenda ahead of the bill. I said, that's not the bill we passed. You didn't pass your bill. We passed a bill that we wrote, and they know that. So I've been taking them to court to hold their feet to the fire. I had 690, let me give you a perfect example. That is about a $690 billion bill. Have you ever heard this administration or anyone else talk about $239 billion went to pay down debt? Have you ever heard that? Did you all know that? A third of that bill was paying down debt, because I think the debt crisis we have will take us down quicker than any other adversary. They never talk about that. Did you hear ever been an energy security bill? No. All you hear about is a climate bill. And I'm not fighting the climate. I support. And there's no one who's written more legislation supporting a transition. I'm just not reckless enough to say I can just discard this, that you need to run the country on a day-to-day basis, and go to something you have aspirations for. We might get you there, but we're not going to basically leave anybody behind. That's the difference in how we approached it. And I cannot figure out why they won't embrace it. We're producing more energy. I know people don't want to hear this. 37 trillion cubic feet of gas this year. 4.7 billion gallons of oil, barrels of oil, 4.7 billion. We've stabilized. Now, there's a 4 billion's been cut out. If it wasn't for what America's doing right now, I can't tell you what the cost of energy would be, because 4 billion's been taken off. Saudi's taken 2 billion off, and with the Russian market, it's taken 2 off. It's ridiculous. But we're trying everything we can to hold it down, and if it wasn't for that piece of legislation, I don't know where inflation would be. I don't know where any of this would be. They said, why'd you call it the Inflation Reduction Act? And I said, well, when we passed the bill, it was 9% inflation. I says, it's 3.4, 3.1. I think we did okay on that. So what else I'm going to call it? We're producing more. We brought the price of gasoline down. All the good stuff. Just accept what the good of the bill did and what the intention, and don't be afraid to tell the extreme on the left and extreme on the right that we didn't pay attention also, but we're just not going to sacrifice our way of life and our economy. And if you're going to be the superpower of the world, you better have some super decisions you have to make on how we run this place.
Maybe one final, and let me just, we have 2 hands up, so I don't know what you want to do. You got 4 hands, but go ahead.
Jump right in. We'll jump around. I'm going to be real quick with my answers.
Introduce yourself.
Nathan Schrader, New England College.
Hey, Nathan.
Thank you for being the voice of reason in the Senate in Washington. As a Democrat, I was wondering if you could tell us, what would your advice be for your party moving forward, since you will no longer be in the Senate and on the ballot, for how the party can catch up from falling behind in rural America, small town America, and among working class voters?
The only thing I pray to my Democrat colleagues is they don't jump back and forth and get rid of the filibuster. You get rid of the filibuster, we've lost democracy as you know it. If you don't like what's going on in the House right now, with the speakers being changed over like a relief pitcher on a baseball team, if you don't like that, you get rid of the filibuster, and it'll be the Senate on steroids of what you see in the House. You will lose democracy as you know it. And that scares the bejesus out of me. And they've been pushed by the extremes. Get rid of this for this reason. Get rid of this for this reason. No, we have that, so you go sit down and talk. Because I can tell you, if you do something in a bipartisan way, it's lasting. You do something strictly on party lines, the next time you get a chance and it switches over, you get rid of it immediately. And that's why we are the country we are. That's why the rest of the world looks to the United States. We've had some stability. And if we're losing that, and we're losing that in the eyes of our allies, and they say, well, I don't know if we can trust the Americans anymore. Yeah, you can. We haven't forgotten who we are, and we won't let you forget who we are either. But it scares me. It really does. So that's all. Don't lose who we are, basically, and what the purpose of. I think there was...
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Just holler it out. I'll hear.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Quick question.
If I can, Jim,
Yes.
Sweeney from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Great.
You know, we have a tradition where we've had moderate Republican governors, and, you know, we're known as a blue state. We know how this kind of message, which is very refreshing, can function at a grassroots level. I guess my question again is how you and your organization can carry this into the presidential election if, as Jim Brett noted, it looks like we may be headed toward
Well, this
the
is
same
not the
type
short
of-
game.
Yeah.
Rick, this is not the short game. This is the long game. The long game is if we don't start now, if it has an impact or not, I don't know. We're going to find out. But it's not the short game. You know, people ask me all the time, how'd you take the pressure? How do you take the pressure? I don't feel pressure, and I'll tell you why. I never had to adjust my answer every time I talked to a different crowd. I knew who I was. I knew what I believed, and I'm able to say, hey, this is who I am. If I make a mistake, I'm sorry. I'll apologize. I'll admit I made a mistake, and I can fix it. You know, Cicero said, to err is human. You're expected to make mistakes. Just don't make them intentionally. Don't make
Gentleman
them
had the ball
intentionally.
cap
Yes, right
on.
back.
Yeah.
I think the gentleman beside him, too. Go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
Here's the mic.
Thank you. Senator Manchin,
Yes.
as a West Virginian for 40 years myself,
Hot
and
damn.
a Granite Stater for 4, I want to say welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to see you here. I want to go back to the first question that the president asked about you possibly switching to independent. And
Well, I am an independent. I can switch independent. I can be an independent R, an independent I, whatever, independent D, whatever you like.
Well, I just want to say for the record, I don't know if you recall, but your first term in the West Virginia House of Delegates, I was a journalism intern.
Oh, my goodness.
And we worked together in getting daily reports out where you would call into the radio station. And I could tell you...
I was looking for any type of advertisement I could get back then.
But you came from a long line of West Virginia Democrats. And I want to just say for the record, Joe Manchin's politics have not changed. He is the same West Virginia Democrat he has been since his first term in the West Virginia House of Delegates. And so now he's considered a moderate or even a conservative Democrat, but he's the same Democrat he's always been. Having said that, and I'm not a Democrat, but I feel bad for the Democrats in New Hampshire who aren't getting fair choice.
Gotcha.
If a bunch of Democrats, how would you feel if a bunch of Democrats in New Hampshire wrote in Joe, not Biden, but wrote in Joe Manchin?
I cannot prevent whatever you want to do.
Would that inspire you possibly? Would that inspire you possibly to consider trying that in other states?
No, again, I'm not here campaigning. I'm here basically concerned about my country the same as you are. So whatever. I've said this. I have a burning desire to save the country, whatever it takes. I lay on the track, I do whatever you want me to do. But I'm more concerned about my 10 grandchildren, your grandchildren, and future generations than I have ever been. And I mean that. So whatever the good Lord leads me or whatever life takes me, I'm willing to do. But I'm going to give everything I have to save the country. Because I think we're on a collision course. And if not, we're going to have discourse you've never seen before. Lawlessness is going on right now. You know, if you do the crime, you got to pay the time. Not anymore. You can do grab and smash and steal and grab. Let me tell you, in West Virginia, you smash and grab, somebody's going to smash and grab you. And I think New Hampshire's probably the same way. Let me say one thing if I can, real quick.
Go ahead, yeah.
Why are most, your political identification, if you're Democrat or Republican, I can only relate to me. I can relate to, I'm a Democrat. My grandfather, I assume, because my state, I'm understanding in my history, my state was mostly Republican up until the Great Depression. And then FDR comes along, and I know my grandfather, being the most loyal human being and a hard worker, had to have some loyalty to saying, this guy gave me a chance to survive and take care of 5 children, my dad being the oldest. I don't know. I mean, that's who, and then I was raised in a family that I didn't know very many Republicans as people, or even people would claim they were Republican in West Virginia back in those days. So all I saw was people that were hardworking, held you accountable, and made you responsible for your actions. That's all I ever saw. And the most compassion, my grandmother was a one-woman social worker. There was no social services. We lived I said I was a privileged child, and they says, it must have been a big neighborhood. I lived between the creek and the tracks. Must have been a fancy home, 3-room garage apartment. I says, my introduction to sex education, every time my mom got pregnant, we got a bunk bed. So if I saw the bunk bed coming in before my mom went to the hospital, I said, Janet, my older sister, she's 3 years, I said, Janet, I think something's going on. That's just the way we were raised. So I said, I was a privileged child, and they said, why? And I said, I had unconditional love. There was never a day in my life that I didn't have someone, no matter how bad I messed up, love me. And that's just not that much today. So I'm a product of who I am. Whether, you know, and the people that like it or don't, and they draw their conclusions, then fine. But I can tell you, it was rooted in goodness. People that wanted to do something good and help people. Papa would always tell me, one time I wanted to get out of work. I was always the one in the store, had to work in the grocery store. And on my 9, 10, I started at 9 years of age, but everybody had to work. And they were all going swimming and this and that. And I say, Pop, can I get off? Nope, couldn't get off. So I knew he loved football. And I said one time, my grandfather was about 5'6", a little Italian guy, about 5'6", strong as a horse, and he was cutting on the butcher block. And I said, I know I can get him today. I said, hey, Pop, I want to get off and go lift weights so I can get strong and play football, because he loved football. He never even looked up. He says, honey, show me a man that lifts dumbbells, and I'll show you a dumbbell. He says, you want to get strong, get back in that warehouse and move that warehouse around. I never asked to get off again in my life.
Well, with that, we want to thank you. Yeah, we want to thank you. We got a little gift here for you. We got a little gift here. Politics and Eggs bag and a picture.
Thank you. Y'all been great. Thank
No,
you.
you've been great. We're just gonna. If people can just stay here for a couple of minutes, we got a lot of traffic outside, and he's gonna.
I'm gonna move around.
Oh, he's gonna move. He's gonna move around. Okay, so stay here for a couple of minutes as he moves around. Okay.